I discovered my mother had been secretly draining my college fund for years to feed her gambling addiction. When I finally confronted her, she turned it all around and blamed me for being selfish, crushing any hope for reconciliation. This betrayal shattered my world and made me question everything I thought I knew about family. Growing up, I always believed my mother was my biggest supporter. I was an only child, raised in a small town, dreaming of a future filled with promise. College was supposed to be my ticket out, a fresh start, a new life. But beneath the surface, my mother was fighting a secret battle no one knew about. Her gambling addiction was spiraling out of control, quietly consuming every penny we had saved for my education. At first, I noticed small things, missing bills, unexplained withdrawals from our joint accounts, but I brushed them off, trusting my mother's reassurances that everything was fine. It wasn't until I found my college savings account nearly empty that the harsh reality hit me like a freight train. I confronted her, expecting remorse or an explanation, but instead, she accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, as if her addiction somehow justified stealing my future. The moment I realized the depth of her betrayal, my trust crumbled. I felt isolated, confused, and devastated. How could the person who gave me life become the one to destroy my dreams? And as I stood there, grappling with my anger and heartbreak, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. That night, unable to sleep, I secretly checked the security camera in our living room, and what I saw shattered me completely. My mother wasn't just gambling, she was lying to everyone, hiding the truth behind a facade of normalcy. The image of her sneaking out with a wad of cash haunted me, sealing my resolve to uncover the full truth. When I saw that footage on the security camera, my whole world twisted in ways I never imagined. My mother wasn't just losing money here and there, she was gambling away our entire future, night after night, with no intention of stopping. Yet, every time I confronted her, she twisted the truth, making me feel like the villain for daring to question her. I pretended everything was normal for weeks. I smiled, laughed, played my part, all while my heart was cracking into 1,000 pieces. It was exhausting, hiding the storm raging inside me. Every small interaction with her felt like walking on a tightrope. One wrong step, and everything could fall apart. I started noticing other things too. The late-night phone calls she hurried to end when I walked by. The strange receipts for unfamiliar casinos and online betting sites hidden among the mail. And then there were the countless excuses, bills unpaid, promises broken, money missing from accounts with no explanation. All of it piled up like dark clouds in the sky, and I was drowning beneath the weight. Memories that once seemed insignificant began flashing through my mind, moments that now screamed warnings I was too blind to see. Like the time she canceled my birthday party last minute, saying she was too tired. Or when she gave vague answers about where our savings were going, brushing it off as family expenses. Now, all of those moments stung like betrayals. My internal conflict was overwhelming. Part of me desperately wanted to believe she could change, that this was a phase, a struggle she could overcome. But the other part screamed that I was being naive, that I was allowing myself to be hurt again and again by someone I loved. I remember the nights I lay awake, replaying arguments in my head. "Why can't you just understand? I'm trying," she would say, her voice trembling. But how could I understand when every attempt to trust was met with lies? I hated having to investigate her like a criminal, but the fear of losing my future was stronger than my hesitation. Then came the breaking point. I stumbled upon a bank statement showing the last remnant of my college fund wiped out in a single transaction. The name of the casino was stamped glaringly, a bold accusation I couldn't ignore. My hands shook as I dialed her number, the rage bubbling beneath my calm exterior. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" I demanded, voice cracking. Her reply was icy and unexpected. She accused me of selfishness, saying I didn't appreciate the sacrifices she made, that I was tearing the family apart. I was stunned. How had the person who raised me flipped the script so easily? The relationship fractured that day. The warm home I knew turned cold, filled with silent dinners and pointed looks. I began to withdraw from everyone, friends, family, because I felt ashamed and betrayed. But beneath it all, a fire ignited inside me, a resolve to reclaim what was stolen, no matter the cost. And just when I thought I could gather my strength, a text arrived that shook me to my core. It was from a stranger, a woman claiming to be my mother's gambling partner, hinting at secrets darker than I imagined. My hands trembled as I stared at the message, realizing this was only the beginning of a deeper, more twisted story. I couldn't just sit back and let everything crumble. After that mysterious message from my mom's supposed gambling partner, I knew I had to dig deeper. The feeling of helplessness was suffocating, but something inside me sparked, a need to uncover the full truth, no matter how ugly it might be. I started secretly tracking her movements, checking her phone when she left it unattended, and trying to piece together the puzzle she so desperately tried to hide. One night, I found deleted messages on her phone, conversations filled with desperation, promises to pay off debts, and ominous threats from people demanding money. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that her addiction wasn't just a personal struggle, it was dragging our entire family down a dark path. The paranoia, the lies, the endless cycle of hiding, it was suffocating her, and now it was suffocating me too. Tension built inside me as I confronted people she'd been in contact with, trying to understand the extent of her secret life. Every answer led to more questions. "She's in deep trouble," one contact said in a hushed voice, "and if she doesn't pay up soon, things will get ugly." The weight of these words crushed me, but it also fueled my determination to save what I could from the wreckage. Meanwhile, at home, things grew colder. My mother's demeanor shifted. Less warmth, more guardedness. She sensed I was watching, questioning, and it created a silent war between us. I caught her glancing nervously when I came into a room, her hands trembling just slightly as she hid her phone. I could almost hear the unspoken accusation. "Why are you digging? Why can't you just let me be?" My heart ached with every passing day. I was torn between wanting to help her and fearing what her downfall might mean for me. Could I forgive such deep betrayal? Could I find a way to mend the broken pieces? Or was this the end of the road for us? The real shock came when I discovered a second secret. My mother had taken out loans in my name, thousands of dollars I never knew about, debts that were now my burden to bear. The betrayal was crushing. It was no longer just about stolen savings. It was about my entire future being jeopardized by someone I once trusted with my life. That night, as I stared at the loan documents, I realized I had crossed a line. This wasn't just about gambling anymore. It was about survival. And I was ready to fight back, no matter the cost. The moment I confronted my mother with the evidence, everything erupted like a powder keg ready to explode. She didn't deny a single thing. Instead, her eyes filled with anger and desperation. "You think I wanted this?" she spat. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I'm doing this for us, even if it means sacrificing myself." But her words felt hollow, a thin veil over years of lies and broken promises. That night, the house was filled with a tense silence. We were no longer mother and child, but two adversaries locked in a bitter battle. I felt my heart fracture with every word exchanged, the love I once had replaced by rage and disbelief. It was as if the foundation of my life was crumbling beneath me. The fallout from our confrontation was immediate. My mother began to distance herself, retreating into a shell of secrecy. She stopped answering my calls, left without explanation, and when she did return, the coldness between us was palpable. The house felt empty, echoing with the ghosts of what we once were. In the days that followed, I uncovered even more. Unpaid bills piling up, utilities cut off, and letters from debt collectors that my mother had hidden. It was clear Her addiction had pushed us to the brink of financial ruin. Yet, despite everything, I found myself caught in a web of conflicting emotions: pity, anger, and a desperate hope that she might find a way out. But the most devastating blow came when I discovered she had considered selling the house without telling me. This was the last piece of the puzzle, the ultimate betrayal. The thought of losing the only home I had ever known was unbearable. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the memories, the safety, the life that was being ripped away. As I stood in the empty living room, the weight of the situation crushed me. I was forced to ask myself the hardest question: could I forgive her? Could I rebuild what was broken, or was our family beyond repair? The answers didn't come easily, and the silence that followed was deafening. But amidst the darkness, a spark of resolve flickered. I realized that no matter how shattered things were, I had to fight, not just for the money or the house, but for my own sanity and future. The battle was far from over, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The decision to fight back wasn't easy. Every step felt like walking on shattered glass, but I knew surrender wasn't an option. I reached out to financial advisors, lawyers, and even support groups for families torn apart by addiction. It was humbling to admit how deep this mess ran, but the more help I gathered, the stronger I felt. At the same time, the emotional toll was immense. Friends distanced themselves, not knowing how to help or afraid of being caught in the crossfire. Family members chose sides, some refusing to speak to me, others urging me to forgive and forget. I was isolated, but oddly determined. The fight was mine alone, and I would see it through. In moments of quiet, memories would flood back. I remembered my mother's warm smile, the bedtime stories, the sacrifices she made when I was young. Those memories were bittersweet, a reminder of what was lost and what I hoped might still be saved. Yet, the reality was harsh. Trust had been shattered, and rebuilding it seemed impossible. One evening, I found an old photo album tucked away in a drawer. Flipping through the pages, I saw the family I once knew, laughing, carefree, united. The contrast to our current state was jarring. I felt a pang of grief so deep it left me breathless, but it also fueled my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for money or a house. I was fighting for the chance to heal the wounds and reclaim my family. The legal battle was grueling. My mother's addiction became the centerpiece, with creditors demanding payment and the threat of foreclosure looming over our home. Court hearings dragged on, emotions running high as we aired our dirty laundry in front of strangers. But with every setback, I reminded myself why I started: to protect my future and confront the truth, no matter how painful. As I sat alone one night, exhausted and drained, I realized something profound. This fight wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about taking control of my life again, about refusing to let the past define me. And with that clarity came a strange sense of peace. Not the kind that erases pain, but the kind that empowers you to keep moving forward. Leaving behind the life I once knew wasn't just a physical move. It was a seismic shift that tore through my soul. I packed my bags, not just with clothes and essentials, but with the heavy weight of shattered trust and unresolved anger. The city I left behind held too many ghosts, memories that stabbed deeper than any wound. Starting over meant more than finding a new address. It meant reinventing myself in a place where no one knew my story. The first days in the new town were a blur of unfamiliar faces and empty rooms. The silence echoed louder than I expected. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, haunted by the past, yet desperate to create a future. Every phone call unanswered, every message left unread, deepened the isolation. I realized freedom came with a price, a loneliness so sharp it cut through the bravest parts of me. Yet, in that silence, a strange clarity emerged. Without the constant shadow of betrayal looming over me, I began to rediscover who I was beneath the pain. I started journaling, pouring my darkest fears and hopes onto paper. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could confront my demons without judgment. Each word written was a step towards healing, a rebellion against the chaos my life had become. I also found solace in late-night walks, wandering unfamiliar streets lit by dim street lamps, the quiet a balm to my restless mind. Sometimes I'd stop in small diners, listening to strangers' conversations, feeling less alone in their stories of struggle and survival. These moments, though fleeting, stitched together fragments of hope in my battered heart. But escape didn't mean forgetting. The debt I inherited in my name followed me like a relentless ghost, a reminder that the past wasn't so easily left behind. Creditors' calls, legal notices, and the threat of financial ruin loomed over my fresh start. I grappled with the bitter reality that even in a new place, I couldn't outrun the consequences of my mother's actions. One evening, a sudden knock at the door jolted me from my solitude. Standing there was a figure from my past, eyes filled with regret, and a desperation I recognized all too well. The unexpected visit stirred a storm of emotions: anger, relief, fear. This encounter wasn't just a reunion, it was a reckoning. Our conversation peeled back layers of pain and misunderstanding. I learned truths that complicated the black and white narrative I'd held onto for so long. The path to forgiveness, if it existed, was tangled and fraught with heartbreak. Yet, beneath the wounds and words, a fragile thread of hope flickered, a possibility that even the deepest scars could one day heal. As night fell, I stood by the window, staring into the darkness. The city lights shimmered like distant stars, reminders that even in the darkest nights, there was light to be found. My journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face whatever came next, with all its uncertainty and promise. Confronting the person I once trusted most was like stepping into a storm I had long avoided. The moment he walked into the room, I saw the same eyes I had loved, now filled with a mix of guilt and defiance. The air between us was thick with unspoken words and years of pain. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say 1,000 times, but when faced with him, the words tangled in my throat. Our conversation was a battleground of emotions. I accused, he defended, and somewhere between the accusations and excuses, the raw truth began to surface. He admitted to hiding his double life, the debts and the lies, but he begged for understanding, painting himself as a victim of circumstances. My heart wrenched. How do you reconcile love with betrayal? The deeper we dug, the more complicated the story became. Friends and family took sides, turning the fracture into a chasm. The community we once belonged to became a minefield of whispers and judgment. It felt as if the world was watching, waiting for us to break completely. The pressure was suffocating, but it also forced me to see the cracks in my own armor. In the heat of anger and despair, I found clarity. I realized that some battles aren't about winning or losing. They're about choosing what kind of person you want to be. I decided I wouldn't let bitterness consume me. Instead, I chose to reclaim my narrative, to tell my story on my terms. The climax came unexpectedly when he handed me a letter. An apology so raw and heartfelt it shattered my defenses. It spoke of regret, mistakes, and a desperate hope for redemption. But beneath the words lurked the haunting question: could I ever truly forgive? That night, I lay awake pondering the fragile line between forgiveness and self-preservation. I knew that moving forward meant embracing uncertainty and pain, but also the possibility of healing. My journey wasn't about erasing the past, but learning to live with it, stronger and wiser. The aftermath of confrontation left an emptiness I hadn't anticipated. The silence that once comforted now felt like a vast void, echoing the loss and pain that lingered. Sitting alone in the dim light of my new apartment, I was flooded with memories, flashes of laughter, warmth, and promises long broken. The house, once filled with life, now seemed like a distant dream, fading into darkness. I found myself staring at old photographs, each one a bittersweet reminder of a time when everything seemed possible. The smiles, frozen in time, contrasted sharply with the turmoil raging inside me. How did it come to this? How did the people I loved most become the source of such deep wounds? The questions haunted me, but answers remained elusive. Seeking solace, I revisited the journal I had started. Writing became my refuge, a way to untangle the knots of my thoughts and feelings. Through words, I confronted my fears and hopes, slowly piecing together fragments of strength. It was a painful process, but each entry was a step toward reclaiming myself. Despite the healing, the scars of betrayal remained. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. I grappled with feelings of resentment and grief, yet I also recognized the importance of forgiveness, not for their sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger only chained me to the past, preventing me from moving forward. As days turned into weeks, I began to envision a new purpose. Maybe this pain wasn't an end, but a beginning, a chance to rebuild on my own terms. The future was uncertain, but within that uncertainty lay possibility. I realized that healing wasn't linear, it was messy, complex, and deeply personal. One evening, as I walked through the city streets, the lights flickered like stars guiding me through the darkness. I felt a quiet resolve grow inside, a determination to face whatever came next, with courage. The journey ahead was daunting, but I was no longer the same person who had fled that broken home. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized my story was far from over. The pain, betrayal, and heartbreak had shaped me in ways I hadn't expected. I found myself writing a letter, not to anyone else, but to the person I was and the person I was becoming. If I could go back, I would still take that path, I wrote, because it made me who I am today. Stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. I've learned that not all wounds heal, and some scars are meant to remind us of our resilience. I didn't have all the answers, and the future was still uncertain, but there was a quiet acceptance in my heart, a recognition that life's complexities couldn't always be neatly resolved. Sometimes, all you can do is keep moving forward, even when the road is dark and winding. There were moments when the past crept back in, dreams haunted by memories, shadows of old fears. But instead of fear, I met them with a calm strength. I knew now that healing was a journey, not a destination. As I closed the letter, I felt a sense of peace. Not a triumphant victory, but a gentle acknowledgement of survival. My story, like so many others, was imperfect and ongoing. And that was okay. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones left unfinished, because they invite us to reflect, to feel, and to grow.